welcome once again to the Statesman podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Swat, and I'm your host here. Like you all know, before we go on, please like our videos, subscribe, and you can share it as much as possible so that it can go around. Don't forget to also leave your comments for us in the comment section, and we'll engage you. Right. It's not news any longer that ASUU has been on strike for the last 78 months, and it's still a lingering crisis. But new developments have come up in the sense that the federal government has granted an alternative, or do you say another body, license to operate side by side ASUU, and that has generated a lot of conversation from Nigerians asking the rationale. Are this going to be used, or this new organization is going to be used in the hands of the government to carry out its own desires? What exactly is the intent and purpose? And then for the lingering strike, just how long are the students going to wait before the strike is called off? Now, these are some of the questions I'll be discussing with my guest today. Well, let me introduce him. He's someone that I'm sure a lot of you know based on his precedence. He is Mr. Jude. Mr. Jude Imagwe is the former advisor to the president, that's President Goodluck Jonathan, on student affairs and youth. And then he is the former NANS president too. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Right. Mr. Jude, ASUU has been on strike for 8 months right now and
news.
still counting. So let's know your opinion. Does this show a lack of concern for the educational sector by this government, or how do you assess this lingering strike?
The truth is, you will not narrow it to this government.
Yes.
Because in every successive government, there have been ASUU strike in one way or the other. But where you can put some level of blame on the shoulder of this government is their lackadaisical attitude towards approaching it. Welfares and condition of service by staffers and other employees at all times are usually reviewed. So when ASUU want to review theirs, it's nothing out of place. It's just like having your own staffers in your organization. And when they find out that there is skyrocketed nature of things in the commodity market, the cost of economy has grown high, their cost of living is not also commensurable with the salary they take home, they will now feel that probably there's need for their condition of service to be reviewed. And again, that is what is tied to the ASUU's case. I remember in the government I served, led by President Goodluck Jonathan, there was this same strike like this, and that was the one that was tied to the demand for needs assessment. It was for a period of time, and after a time, it took the intervention of the president. And that is why I say the lackadaisical attitude to which this present administration has shown to it, that is the concern and that is the worry. Whether there have been strikes before in other governments, yes, there have been strikes in other governments. Yeah. And whether these issues have been totally resolved, no, these issues have not been totally resolved because they are revolving issues. Now, so the President Jonathan spent not less than 11 hours to discuss with ASUU, made commitment, made promises, and they arrived at a logical conclusion, and the strike was called off. And now from the day one that this strike commenced, this government, particularly led by the president, has not shown any sign of seriousness. No, see, you must not just be a president to a nation. You'll be a president, you'll be a father, you'll be a leader. And there are characteristics that makes one a leader. That man must have human empathy, must have strong emotional intelligence, must be sensitive to people's worries and concerns. This president have not shown that.
I mean, even with the meetings that have been organized?
I'm going there gradually.
Okay.
Now, when you designate your lieutenant to carry out an affairs and activities on your behalf, you equally have a duty to get a feedback from them. And if you have a concern, you say, okay, you Minister of Labour, superintend over because it's a labor dispute issue. Yeah. But that does not take it from the fact that there is a ministry that is the supervisory ministry of education, which is the Ministry of Education. Yeah. Ministry of Education supervises everything that has to do with academics in tertiary education, polytechnics, universities, both public and private universities, and colleges of education, monotechnics, and all the rest, even unity schools. Yeah. That is the function of the Minister of State for Education. Now, if you found out that the campuses have been under lock and key for a month, that is 30 days. That automatically means the lifespan of a young man in school has been cut short for 30 days. And you designate your ministers to carry out this duty. After 30 days, there is no head forward. You either expand that committee or give them a marching order. Now, the concern was that the president waited up until 5 months, not to even meet with these people, but to give an order in Daura, in Katsina State, that is giving them an order to go back to class, and within 2 weeks, he was going to have those issues resolved. Now, there are 2 points to it. The Ministry of Labour, Ministry of Education, and other agencies that met with ASUU leadership, they constituted committee alongside the secretary to the government of the federation.
Yeah.
And now for any action and inaction that subordinates of a government takes, it means that that action is directly instructed by the president or indirectly approved by the president. And now you constituted a committee which is the Lulu Briggs-led committee. The Lulu Briggs finished and recommended back to government. Now the same government that constituted that committee were now in position of the recommendation of that committee, and they were now querying the report of a committee you constituted. It wasn't ASUU that constituted the committee for them, they constituted it themselves. Now they were querying the same committee. Now, if everything in that committee cannot be addressed in total, the simple sense and common sense says that you bring this thing back to the table and call the warring parties. Now, this committee have recommended ABC. Because of the economic situation globally, there is no part of the world that will pretend that they don't have economic crisis. Because of the economic situation globally, we can accommodate AB. And this CD will be kept in view. When the economic situation improves, we will bring them to the table and we'll discuss it. But for these ones that require matters of urgent importance, let us address these things so that you can go back to classes. They didn't get to do that. They only said that they are not comfortable with the report. So you constituted a committee sent a report back to you by way of recommendation. You say you're not comfortable. So it's like they were pushing people back and front and without any sense of sincerity. That on its own is provocative enough.
Okay.
Now, then the second aspect was the statement and the directive that was given by the president. The president gave a directive for 2 weeks. 2 months after his directive, he himself was still not aware that he gave a directive 2 months ago. that again, you see. So all these issues are issues that on our own part, I feel for my brother's students because I have gone through it before. I have my first degree at the University of Benin. I have a master's at the University of Benin and I have another master's at Nasarawa State University. Then the master's I just acquired, concluded outside. Now, I can now tell you what educations are, the practices of education locally and internationally, and I will tell you that we are backward. I will tell you that everything that ASUU is demanding for, there are things that government needs to urgently look into because these things are things that make standards of education competitive.
Okay, so let's look at some of the demands by ASUU. One is the IPPIS. They're saying that should be turned around for them. And some people have argued that, look, as an employee, you cannot demand or dictate to your employer how should be.
I agree with that too.
We also talk about the revitalization fund, which is running into trillions of naira, 1 point something trillion naira. I can't be sure of the exact amount right now. And some people say, well, where do we get that kind of money? Because Nigeria is in a state, which you actually mentioned in the course of your explanation. Do you think ASUU's demands are unreasonable at a time like this?
I will not say their demands are unreasonable. I may only say their demands and their provocation are product of mistrust.
How do you mean?
Yeah, when I say they are product of mistrust, I mean that if you had an agreement with somebody yesterday, it's a conceptual agreement.
Yeah.
I've come to you and I've said, can we do these things? Call off the strike yesterday, go back to school. Let's continue with our negotiation. 2 years, 3 years down the lane, you asked me to call off a strike and I went off on strike. I called off the strike. And 2 years down the lane, everything that we discuss, you have not attempted to start the preparation of either of these things. It's insulting to them. Now, so whether their demands are timely now becomes a problem. But whether they are legitimate demands, these demands are legitimate.
Okay.
Now, the revitalization, I equally have a challenge. I just want us to finish this first round with ASUU. When students are back to school, there are certain things we equally as Nigerians need to begin to interrogate about and around the resources that are allocated to management of institutions, how these monies are being spent, because a government allocates money to institution and through governing council goes back and collects this money from institution. These things are not secrets. They are not alien to some of us that have had time to, I had commanded a students body. I was president of NANS. So I know some of this high level of handedness that administrations of institutions even suffer in the hands of governing councils. These are worrying situations. Now, but for the now, when you say about revitalization and you talk about the IPPS, yes, I am the one, I employed you. There are conditions of our agreement upon which I employ you. Now, are you going to obey to these conditions of services?
Yeah.
Because as much as you want your welfare and your conditions of services to be met,
Yeah.
I am your employer. I equally have benchmark and criteria upon which, and the listed criteria and conditions you must meet before I absorb you into my. Now, if that is the case, but what they said, ASUU is saying that both of these, the one ASUU is proposing and the same IPPS that government is proposing, both of them have equally not passed the test.
Oh, wow.
Now, if ASUU say the one they have passed the test, the platform they have passed the test, all government needs to do is an agreement. Now, who controls it? I cannot be paying you salary and you are controlling or regulating how I pay you your salary. That's it. And you see the summary of it all, it ends on understanding. But why I feel that the problem is lingering and is moving from goalpost to goalpost is because there had been an habitual state of betrayal. ASUU will assume that they have kept to their part at every time government had called them to call off the strike, and they call off the strike. And at this instance, if government calls them, they would have looked at it. Well, why then would we have closed or shut down the campuses for 8 months?
Yes.
But again, the truth still remains clear, and these are truths that you cannot take away from public conversation. At every time our campuses are shut, are closed, students suffer. Their mates in other parts of the world cannot be marking time because Nigerians' academic environments are shut down. Because some of them would have been involved in one thing, or I would say some ladies would have gone into marriage. Some of the guys, some of those other ones would have gone into private businesses and create up the entrepreneurship lifestyle. And they assume that probably they are doing better without education. And some may have gotten themselves into social vices that the country itself will begin to be at the receiving end at the end of the day. So these are the things that I expect ASUU and government to look at. Because now ASUU is still requesting for their money and government is trying to impose no work, no pay. Now, no work, no pay can only come to stand if an employee voluntarily decides not to work even when the conditions of services are met. But a man has a right constitutionally to protest and down tools if the conditions of services are not
favorable.
Yeah. So all these things are things that I expect. All that is just needed is leadership, and leadership with sincerity of purpose. And I think all the situations will be get right.
All right. Thank you so much for watching. It's still the Statesman podcast. We'll just take a very quick break. And then when we come back, we'll conclude this discussion with new developments that have come, all in regards to the ASUU strike. Do stay with us. Don't go anywhere. You're still on to the Statesman podcast. Welcome back. I'm seated today with Jude Imagwe, who is former NANS president and former special advisor to Goodluck Jonathan on Student Affairs and Youth. And we've been looking at the ASUU impasse with the government. It's been 8 months already and still counting. And many are wondering, is the government committed in any way to ensure that this stops? Because like he rightly said, students around the world are not going to wait for Nigerian students all because we're on strike. How has been the response of the government? Well, recent developments, Mr. Jude has it that the government has registered an alternative body or another body, which of course is legitimate. But I don't know what your take is. CONUA is now real and in existence side by side with ASUU. Now, many have seen this as a political gimmick by the government. Some say it's legitimate because you have, what do you call it now, NLC, you have TUC, so it's okay. But then at a time like this, many have questioned the rationale of registering this particular body. What do you think about that?
Yeah, if you say we have is legitimate, every government has a right. There's right of association.
Yeah.
There's right of assembling of people to wanting to form whatever organization and association they so desire to form. They have a right to it. But is it timely? The answer is wrong. It's no. And when you say TUC, you ask yourself, how did TUC come to be? TUC was an appendage and a product of Obasanjo,
yes.
General Obasanjo's led administration. And some of all these gimmicks and tactics are to weaken the strength, to weaken the structure of an existing movement. LLC was a movement that every other organization were under it, including the TUC. The sister bodies that constitute the TUC, they were all part of LLC. But when government discovered that they had too many protracted strikes,
Yeah.
agitations demand by NLC, and the only way they feel they could go about it, rather than addressing and confronting the issues the way it should be addressed,
Yeah.
they went into the rank and files of NUC and they broken it and weakened it by coming up with TUC. That is exactly what the progress of this coup is. Now, I will tell you clearly that will not equally undermine the strength of ASUU.
Oh, you think?
That cannot undermine the strength of
Okay.
ASUU. Because why I will tell you it cannot undermine the strength of ASUU is the fact that there's a total disconnect among staffers and employers of President Buhari's led administration.
Okay.
There is no synergy. They don't have a meeting point where they work. They carry their egos to punish the Nigerian people, and their pride is what has led us to where we are. There's a serious rivalry between the Minister of Education and the Minister of Labour. Now, and in the statement that were credited to the Minister of Labour yesterday, he's equally extending it to one of their leaders in APC. I don't like mentioning names of people because I'm not to go and sell any person's image. People should pay me to promote what they do. Now, what I'm saying is the Minister of Labour, the Minister of Education is insisting that he's making effort at resolving the crisis with ASUU. The Minister of Labour, without a consultation with the Minister of Education, registered other bodies and gave them certificate because he has that as those are statutory responsibility of the Ministry of Labour. Then again, just while the Minister of Labour, former Governor of Anambra State, Chris Ngige, who again coincidentally is a medical doctor, so I do not know what his business is with Ministry of Labour and Productivity. I don't know why he's not sent to Ministry of Health or look for any of the health centers and make him one of those. So you see, they have a lot of them in places that do not equally match their skills and their practice. How can a medical doctor be a Minister of Labour? Now that again too will not say does not affect his expertise. There's no extra skill attached to that. All the calamities that have befallen negotiations between trade unions and government, they are weaknesses to the fact that you need people that have expertise.
Exactly.
Now, I don't know if you are equally aware that the Speaker of the House of Representatives just 3 days ago met with the ASUU leadership.
Yes.
While he was meeting with the ASUU leadership, it was at that same time the Minister of Labour was issuing certificate of credence of accreditation to a body that now weakened ASUU's strength. So you see, when you see all these things, they begin to make you look as if you are very stupid, as if you do not even have a sense of reasoning or a sense of thinking. A government that comes in the morning to say we are trying to resolve an issue, and in the afternoon the government is telling you that we are splitting this body into two, and is giving another matching order to pro-chancellors and vice chancellor for institutions to go and open universities. So the academic staffs union will not like, okay, since you want to do it this way, we have bared it. See, my dear, the worst form of thing you can do to a man is to dare him. And when you dare him, he bears it for a period of time. Resistance begins to set in.
Exactly.
And where they have find themselves now, both parties have crossed the red line. The ASUU would assume that we have bear this thing for 8 months. It will become an insulting thing for us to just go back without achieving anything. The government will say, we have starved them for 8 months. Let's starve them further and see. And also, who suffers it? Now, what I feel government can extract from where we are is the fact that if I'm to be advising a government, is to tell the government one honest truth. We cannot continue in this cycle.
Sure. We've
been able to have the campuses shut for 8 months. Glory to our students that have been peaceful, students that have been tolerating, students that have still been law-abiding. There are no parts of the world. There are certain parts of the world that if you attempt this thing, the country will be crumbled, and the government would have been chased out of government.
Yes.
Now, but we have law-abiding citizens in this country. We have one of the most cool and level-headed citizens, young set of folks in the world resident in Nigeria, and that is the blessing the country has that they are taking for granted.
Yeah.
All a government should have done is to okay, ASUU, bring everything you want to discuss within now and in the nearest future together. I will do ABC. We may not be able to do all, but ASUU, while we are doing this ABC, sign on the document here that in the next 10 years or in the next 20 years, you will not go on strike.
That would be a trap.
No, it's not a trap. It's for the fact that you will now have a steady calendar. You have an assurance that while you are working to keep yours, in the next 10 years,
at least we are sure
there will be no strike. So any child that starts SS1 today knows that in the next 10 years, he or she is a graduate.
True. Sure.
Those that are pursuing 4 years academic program. And so you do not put people in places of hopelessness and you expect them to still be hopeful. People that should have graduated some months ago. See, let us not forget that our campuses were shut down during COVID.
Yeah. That was loss of
Our
time.
campuses were shut down during COVID. But other parts of the world, people were receiving their lectures. I received my lectures under COVID. We had remote classes.
Yeah.
Nigerians do not have the technology to have remote classes. These are some of the challenges you have in our
Yeah,
educational
yeah,
system.
yeah.
Now, even if some of them have technology that can accommodate remote classes, there is disparity between urban and rural education. There is a serious
Yes,
gap.
yes.
So these are things that they need to all put together and understand and see that this is what we need to do.
Okay.
You don't just sit down and say, okay, ASUU is striking. They always strike. What is the merit of why they are striking? And ASUU, again, on their own too, must equally understand the fact that there are parts of the world where academic lecturers down tools. When they down tools, teaching is not part of the tools they down. Teaching continues. The only part that they down is research. They down research because most government of the world depend on the research policies
exactly.
that comes from academic environment to drive their economy.
Exactly.
So when they down their tools in
Examples
terms, when they
abound.
down, when they down their tools in terms of research, government begins to hurriedly beg them because the economy begins to take backward. Now, but education, learning, and teaching is not taken out of it. But ours here, the first thing that is taken out of it, they take learning out of it, and you ask them why you want them to pay them, they say they are still having research works.
All right, let's look at the fact that the 2023 election is fast approaching, campaigns are on, and I mean, if anything, you mentioned at the beginning that it didn't start with this administration. We've seen it subsequently. But then looking to the future, we want a better future, a more optimistic future for the Nigerian students, and a leader who is determined, to bring in some of the solutions you've talked about, about sorting this issue once and for all, or minimize it to the barest minimum level. We have an Atiku candidacy, we have Peter Obi, we have Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and I'm sure that there must be someone who really appeals, to education in Nigeria, someone who understands the issues and is well able and capable. Who do you think out of these candidates?
You mentioned just three. We don't have only three candidates.
No, I mean, these are the major ones.
No, there's
you want
no.
me to mention Kwankwa?
There's no. Shore is contesting.
Oh, Shore, yes.
Dumebi is contesting. Shore was a former student union government.
But
president
Dumebi,
of
I
Ogun
mean,
State.
ADC said they don't have a presidential candidate
whether
anymore.
they say they don't have or they have, but you see the beauty about 2023 election is
Yes.
that the narrative about electoral process has been questioned.
Okay.
Now it has been altered and been provoked by the offshores or where you see young people demonstrating serious strength of participation. And then I will give credence to President Buhari. I don't always salute him because he has done abysmal bad and he's one of the worst presidents Nigeria will ever have to remember. But in terms of certain things like at least he's been able to keep Nigeria together for 7 years till when he's going to hand over outside all the crises that we have had. Secondly, he was courageous enough to sign the Electoral Act.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
oh, yes.
and that alone, you see, the worst form of corruption is electoral corruption, where citizens do not have a right to elect the people that will lead them
Oh, yes.
competently. And so, having said these two and some of the projects he inherited, he sustained them. I will give him credence to that. But for all the promises he made, he failed in part of security, in parts of corruption, in parts of economy, in part of even the welfare and lifestyles of human beings. He has failed and chased most of our young brains out of this country. If you go to the borders of this country and see people that are taking exodus out of this country on a daily basis, you will pity for where we are going to have our human resources in the nearest future. But that is not it. The true case before us is the fact that I'm a Nigerian first before I belong to a political party. And my concern is about the future of Nigeria.
Okay.
Now, I have had interaction with the candidate of the People's Democratic Party. I have a personal relationship with the Labour Party candidate, Governor Peter Obi, Excellency Peter Obi. He was a former governor of Anambra and was a former vice presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party, which is a party I hold membership to. And since he left, he has again raised another conversation, which has equally triggered some level of active citizen participation. Now we thank God for that. Why we thank God for that is the fact that the product of 2023 election will again not undermine the right and the power of Nigerian people. I had a clear conversation with Vice President Atiku and the presidential candidate of People's Democratic Party. And we discussed beyond what people are able having in public space. Now, some of the things we discussed, I'll tell you on the part of education. We started discussing education that every product of a society is a failure of a classroom. Now, for every one of us, you see, is a failure of a classroom. Now, because everybody had at one point or the other gone through classroom. When I say classroom, these are institutions, either classroom of school, classroom of religious institution, classroom of traditional institution, or classroom of other institutions that government have put together to checkmate and direct the growth of citizens. I will do a little bit comparison. You say that people in the developed world, they are usually exposed, they are enlightened, and they are concerned about what happened in their country. They don't learn these things on the street. They learned these things from either the classroom. A teacher in the classroom tell the student that you have to behave well so the police don't get to arrest you. And as they are telling you so the police don't get to arrest you, either the Metropolitan or the LYPD, they are standing on the window and they are telling you when you come out, you have to behave well so you don't be like those that will throw on the back of these vans. So it's formative stage. But do we have them back here? We don't have these things. So students go to school, teachers that take care of these students in school, ranging from primary school. Their welfares are not proper. Their well-being is not even catered for. Their emotions is not equally taken care of. So you expect a child see, some of the teachers you have in school, they just do it because there are no alternative jobs. But outside, people passionately want to be teachers because they want to render service. And these are the differences. That's why I told him, I said, sir, we'll have to address education from classroom. And in addressing education from classroom, I'm telling you, we'll look deeply into teachers' welfare. We look deeply into teachers' welfare. Look at their condition of service. Look at their environment of stay. Now we'll begin to look at the responsibility of children, from parents to teachers to the institutions before the society. Now we are not equally going to accommodate the gap that are inherent in education. A clear example is the fact that a child in my village comes to write WAEC and NECO or JAM with a child in Abuja on the same curriculum. And the standard of teaching in my village and the standard of teaching with the child that went to school in Abuja, they are two different things. Now, so these are issues we are going to discuss. And I told him some of the policies we are designing is the fact that we will create incentive that will encourage teachers to wanting to go to rural areas to teach, so that they will know that they are no longer going to be serving as a disadvantaged set of persons because they are in remote places. So there will be security for them there. There will be better accommodations for them. Their welfare package will be okay there. Then we equally have to look at our curriculum system. What is our curriculum system? Our educational curriculum system is obsolete. I'm telling you, the last time we reviewed our educational policy was 2014-2015.
That's over
2014. Now, see, we have had COVID. COVID on its own was a disruption to academic policy. Now, Ebola came first. Ebola disrupted calendar in Nigeria. COVID now came. Every other country in the world had reviewed their education policy because of the outcome of COVID. But our policy is still... So, and to tell you that we are still operating on Millennium Development Goal policy. While every other part of the world that are serious with their education, they have gone to sustainable development. Rwanda that came out from... we have SDG, but does that translate to our education policy? It is not accommodated in our policy because the policy has not been reviewed. Rwanda that went into war and went into crisis, they are ahead of us in terms of education. They are ahead of us in terms of entrepreneurship. Now again, we are equally going to look at status pack policy. There is going to be specific policy that encourages status. You don't say, okay, because I want to run into ICT, you don't have a bank where you can go and access loan. Everybody goes to central bank to access loan. No, it has to be decentralized. Every sector needs to have policy that guides and protects them. If you want to go into agriculture, what policy that our policy makers will formulate that young persons that want to go into agro business will be able to access funds? If you want to go into ICT, what policy is being set in place? These things that are policy specific. So say, okay, those that are going to ICT, approach this institution. Those that are going for agriculture, Atiku has developed all these things.
Oh.
We have developed, that's why I'm telling you that, my dear, wait, let the campaign go on the street and let's start it fully. They've lifted the ban of campaign.
Oh,
We've started it.
yeah.
But I'm telling you, in the days and the months ahead, you begin to know what we have prepared on ground. We are not preparing to be telling people that we are going to do ABC. We are prepared to tell people that we have designed roadmaps on what we want to do, from education to health. The vice presidential candidate, the governor of Delta State, is a medical doctor by practice. He's a seasoned politician. And he has gone through the Senate, he served as commissioner, and is presently a governor, meaning that all the expertise that is needed, both in policy formulation and administrative performance, he has it. Our candidate, the presidential candidate, is a former vice president of this country. None of these other candidates have this credential. He's a former vice president, meaning that he has at a time superintended first as acting president. Those decisions he took those time, are they positive to the Nigerian state? If the answer is no, people will go and check for the record. Now, you check again, what was the economic policy of Nigeria as at when he was vice president?
Yeah.
Because the duty of the vice president of a country is the head of economic council.
Yes.
Now, as being the head of economic council, what were we able to achieve? Then we had debt to relieve. And when we were handing over, we handed over of plus to this government, but we have run into minus and negative. And this present government, as much as the president was somewhere in United States last month begging for debt to relieve, I'm telling you, they are proposing a budget of deficit. By tomorrow.
We already
you already have a budget of deficit for tomorrow.
No
a government that when students were closed at home during COVID could have the temerity to tell Nigerians that they were doing home child feeding program. You were feeding children when they were in school. When they have been shut down their parents' homes, you are still doing home feeding program. And this home feeding program are limited to a certain part of this country. If you ask for, we are interrogating all these things. At the appropriate time, they will match the figures we have with the figures they have. When you say billions of naira have been expended on home feeding program, and let us have the figures and the data of those people that you have fed, so that this thing will be correspondence with this. And I blame the international community. You know why I blame them?
Why?
Our government have approached them again for loan. I said there is a conspiracy of silence of not wanting developing nations to develop.
Because, but it's always been there.
No, because
it's always been like that.
If you are lending me money, I will come to meet you that I want you to lend me money to renovate my house. Or I want you to lend me money to build a water factory. Or I want you to lend me money to build community road, so that my community people can have access to their farms, to their school, or to their homes. You lend me this money. 6 months after you lend me this money, you have not constituted any means of coming to review whether that money you gave to me was judiciously used or not. I come back to you again, and you still lend me another money. And you have your review sector to tell you that thing is not done. And you go, you find out that thing is not done. It means there is either a calculated attempt or even an attempted attempt to ensure that this country don't go out of bondage. So you continue to lend us money, so we'll continue to perpetually be subject to whatever decisions and policies you give to us. That thing must end. And it will not end with one day. It will end with the fact that Nigerians in going into 2023, don't look at election around one person.
Okay.
Yeah, they came, my dear, there was nothing we did not tell Nigerians in 2015. I told them that the last time Buhari reviewed his educational qualification was when he went to military. From then till the day he became president, he did not attend any certificate program. That is the man that they elected. See, he did not attend any certificate program. He did not write any book credence to himself. He did not review any book. Neither did he do any paper presentation around anywhere in the world. Not even in Market Women Association or Boy Scout. He was elected. This man refused to attend Security Council and Economic Council for 16 years because he said he didn't believe in all the products of those elections. Now, you locked yourself away from where you would have gathered experience. 2023, let us not center an election around who the president of the country is. See, I tell people that the strongest form of a government is the policy arm of government, which is the legislative arm of government. Because if you have a very strong and dogged legislative arm of government, executive rascality will be checkmated. Because it is the legislators that approve every spending the government spends. And the legislator will have the duty to equally carry out an oversight function. So if you hear that the Ministry of Agriculture has embezzled money, quietly go and look for who is the Senate Committee chairman of agriculture. Who is the House Committee Chairman of Agriculture? Look for the members that constitute that committee. Carry out investigation that their hands have been stained.
Have been sold. Well, we could go on and on. I mean, it's been one interesting session talking with you, very passionate, very knowledgeable about these issues. But we have a time frame, and I think now is the time for us to draw the curtain on this discussion. Thank you, Mr. Jude Imagwe,
Thank you for
coming.
having me.
Really
Thank
a
you.
pleasure.
Thank you
And we
for
hope
having me.
maybe next time we'll call you. Still come again.
Anytime you call me, as long as it has to do with Nigerian state, I'll be here.
All right, that's it for the Statesman podcast. My name is Swat. I'll see you next time.